The castle gates held for 17 hours because of a tool the clan had banned 3 years earlier. Mikawa Fortress. Winter of 1576. Lord Tanaka stood on the inner wall watching his defenses crumble. 800 enemy soldiers besieging his castle. Battering rams hammering the main gate. Siege towers approaching the walls. His garrison of 150 samurai exhausted from 2 days of constant fighting. The gate would fall within hours, maybe minutes, and when it fell, the castle would be overrun, his family would be killed, his domain would be lost. He turned to his senior commander and said the words that admitted everything was ending. "We have no options left. The gate cannot hold. We cannot repel the towers. We are defeated unless something changes." And that was when a young ninja named Daichi stepped forward holding a device that looked like a modified crossbow attached to a wooden frame. Lord Tanaka stared at it and recognized what it was. The forbidden tool. The weapon his clan had ordered destroyed. The invention that senior samurai had called dishonorable, cowardly, a violation of everything warriors stood for. And Daichi, holding this banned device, spoke quietly. "My lord, I kept one. I hid it. I continued developing it in secret. It can save the gate. It can stop the siege towers. It can give us 17 more hours. Enough time for reinforcements to arrive, but using it means defying the ban, means admitting the elders were wrong, means changing how this clan thinks about warfare." Lord Tanaka looked at the device, looked at his crumbling defenses, looked at Daichi, and made the decision that would save his castle and split his clan. "Use it. Show me what your forbidden tool can do. If it works, the ban was wrong. If it fails, we die anyway and the ban becomes irrelevant. You have my authorization. Deploy your weapon." What happened in the next 17 hours would prove that the most dangerous threats to survival are not external enemies, but internal resistance to change. That clans can be destroyed not by superior forces, but by refusal to adapt. That sometimes the person who disobeys orders is the one who saves everyone. And that a tool banned for being too effective, too different, too challenging to traditional honor, might be exactly what survival requires when tradition fails and honor means nothing to the enemy battering down your gates. Before we continue, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button right now. We're pushing to reach 1,000 subscribers and your support makes all the difference. Now let's see how a banned invention became the weapon that held a castle against impossible odds, and why the clan tried to destroy it in the first place. The story begins 4 years earlier, spring of 1572, in the domain of Mikawa, a mid-sized territory in central Japan controlled by the Tanaka clan, a samurai family that had held the region for 6 generations through careful diplomacy and strong defenses. The domain's central fortress was considered impregnable, built on a hill, surrounded by stone walls 30 feet high, defended by a garrison of 200 samurai. It had never fallen to siege, never been breached. The Tanaka clan's reputation was built on this fortress, on the idea that their defenses could not be overcome through force. Daichi was born in 1554, son of a castle engineer named Nobuyuki, who maintained the fortress's defenses, repaired walls, designed improvements to gates and towers. Nobuyuki was not samurai. He was a craftsman, a specialist in fortification. His knowledge was valued, but his status was low. He worked with his hands, which samurai considered beneath their dignity. Daichi grew up in the castle workshops, learning engineering from his father, learning to see structures not as permanent, but as systems that could be improved, modified, redesigned. By age 15, Daichi could calculate load-bearing requirements, could design pulley systems, could improve any mechanical device through careful analysis and testing. At 18, Daichi was apprenticed to his father, officially designated as junior engineer. His job was to assist with maintenance, to learn the fortress's systems, to prepare to eventually take over his father's position. It was steady work, respected within the craftsman community. But Daichi wanted more than maintenance. He wanted to invent, to create new systems, to solve problems that had no existing solutions. His father encouraged this. Engineering is not just maintaining what exists, it is seeing what could exist. If you see a better way to do something, design it, test it, prove it works. That is how knowledge advances. Daichi took this teaching seriously. spent his free time experimenting, building prototype devices, testing mechanisms. The idea for his forbidden tool came while watching the castle's defenders practice archery. Archers stood on the walls, shot arrows at targets placed at various distances. They were skilled, accurate, but Daiichi noticed a limitation. Arrows had maximum range of maybe 300 feet with standard bows. Beyond that, arrows lost force. Accuracy dropped. This meant enemies could position siege equipment 400 feet away, beyond arrow range, and bombard the castle with impunity. Catapults, ballistae, siege towers assembled at safe distance. The castle's archers could not stop them, could only wait for enemies to come closer, and by then the siege equipment was ready, functional, dangerous. Daiichi thought about this problem for weeks. How do you extend arrow range? How do you threaten enemies before they threaten you? Traditional solutions were building bigger bows using heavier arrows, but bigger bows required more strength, were slower to reload, were impractical for castle defense where speed mattered. Daiichi needed a different approach, a mechanism that could store energy, release it efficiently, multiply force without requiring impossible human strength. He started experimenting with crossbows. Crossbows already existed, were used occasionally, but they had limitations: slow reload time, heavy construction, limited range improvement over regular bows. Daiichi studied the mechanics, understood that crossbow advantage was not strength, but leverage. The bow was drawn using mechanical advantage, a windlass or lever which allowed weaker users to generate high tension. But the energy storage was limited by the bow's materials. Wood could only bend so far before breaking. Metal was expensive and difficult to work. Daiichi needed a way to store more energy in a smaller space, and that led him to torsion, the principle that twisted rope or sinew could store tremendous energy. Release it suddenly. This principle powered ancient Roman ballistae. But ballistae were huge, required teams to operate. Daiichi wanted something smaller, portable, usable by one person. He spent 6 months designing, testing, building a hybrid device, a crossbow frame with torsion springs instead of a bow. The springs were bundles of twisted horsehair and silk. Compact, powerful, capable of storing enough energy to throw a bolt 500 feet with lethal force. He called it the torsion caster. Built his first working prototype in autumn of 1573. Tested it in secret in the forest outside the castle. The results exceeded his expectations. The device could fire a bolt 500 feet accurately, could be reloaded in 30 seconds, weighed only 20 pounds, could be mounted on a stand or carried by one person. It was everything he hoped. A weapon that extended defensive range, that could threaten siege equipment before it threatened the castle, that required no exceptional strength or skill to operate effectively. Daiichi brought his prototype to his father, explained the design, demonstrated its capabilities. Nobuyuki was impressed but cautious. This device works, it is effective, but it challenges assumptions. Samurai believe archery is a noble skill, requires years of training. Your torsion caster allows anyone to shoot accurately with minimal training. That undermines the value of master archers, undermines the samurai class's martial advantages. You need to present this carefully. Emphasize that it supplements archers rather than replacing them. Emphasize defensive applications. Do not threaten status. Daiichi agreed, prepared a formal demonstration, requested permission to present his invention to Lord Tanaka and the senior commanders. Permission was granted. The demonstration was scheduled for the 5th day of the 10th month, 1573. Daiichi set up his torsion caster on the castle's practice field, positioned targets at 300, 400, and 500 feet, invited Lord Tanaka and 20 senior samurai to observe. He explained the device's mechanics, its advantages, its potential applications for castle defense. Then he demonstrated. Fired bolts at all 3 targets, hit each one accurately, proved that his device could threaten enemies at ranges no archer could match. The demonstration was technically flawless. The device performed perfectly. Daiichi expected approval, expected orders to build more torsion casters, expected recognition for solving a real defensive problem. Instead, he got controversy, opposition, and eventually prohibition. The senior samurai who watched Daiichi's demonstration had mixed reactions. Some recognized the device's value, saw how it could improve castle defenses, but others saw threat, saw change, saw something that challenged their understanding of proper warfare. The opposition was led by the castle's master of arms, a senior samurai named Mitsuhide, who had spent 40 years mastering archery, who had trained 3 generations of samurai archers, who saw the torsion caster as insult to everything he valued. Mitsuhide spoke first after the demonstration. "This device is effective, I do not dispute that. But effectiveness is not the only consideration. Warfare is not just about killing enemies. It is about honor, about skill, about the warrior's art. This torsion caster requires no skill, allows a peasant to shoot as well as a trained samurai. That is not progress. That is degradation. We should not adopt weapons that eliminate the need for training, for discipline, for the qualities that make samurai superior to common soldiers." Other senior samurai agreed, argued that the torsion caster was dishonorable, that it gave unfair advantage, that using it would be cowardly, that enemies would mock the Tanaka clan for hiding behind devices instead of relying on warrior skill. The arguments were not about effectiveness, they were about identity, about what it meant to be samurai, about whether adopting new technology meant abandoning traditional values. Daiichi tried to respond. "This device does not replace archers. It supplements them, extends their range, protects them from siege equipment. It makes the castle more defensible, which protects everyone inside. How is protecting people dishonorable?" But his arguments were dismissed. He was a craftsman, not samurai. His opinion on honor carried no weight. The debate continued for an hour, became heated, divided the senior commanders. Finally, Lord Tanaka made a decision. "We will test the device in controlled conditions, assign it to one defensive position, see how it performs in practice. If it proves valuable without creating problems, we expand use. If it creates problems, we reconsider. This is a trial, not full adoption." The trial began the next week. One torsion caster was mounted on the east wall tower, operated by a young samurai named Kenshin, who volunteered despite Mitsuhide's objections. Kenshin trained with the device for 3 days, learned to load it, aim it, maintain it. The training was simple, much simpler than learning archery. Within 3 days, Kenshin could hit targets at 400 feet consistently, accuracy that would take years to achieve with a bow. The trial seemed successful. The device worked, created no problems, but success was the problem. Kenshin's rapid competency proved Mitsuhide's fears, that the torsion caster eliminated the skill gap between trained archers and novices, that it made years of archery training less valuable, that it threatened the master archer's status. Mitsuhide began campaigning against the device, talking to other senior samurai, arguing that the torsion caster's ease of use was actually a weakness. If any peasant can operate this device effectively, what prevents enemies from building their own versions? From using them against us, we would be giving enemies a weapon they could copy easily, a weapon that negates our training advantages. This device helps our enemies more than it helps us. We should destroy it before knowledge of its design spreads. The argument was sophisticated wrong, but sophisticated, and it found audience among conservative samurai who feared change, who wanted to believe that traditional methods were superior, who saw any innovation as threat to their status within 2 months. Opposition to the torsion caster had grown from Mitsuhide's personal objection to institutional resistance. A petition was presented to Lord Tanaka, signed by 15 senior commanders. "We request that the torsion caster be prohibited, that its design be destroyed, that no further development of similar devices be permitted. We believe this weapon undermines the martial values of this clan, creates more problems than it solves, and sets dangerous precedent for replacing skill with devices." Lord Tanaka was in a difficult position. He personally thought the torsion caster was valuable, had seen its effectiveness, but he could not ignore 15 senior commanders, could not rule against the consensus of his military leadership without causing division. He called Daiichi and his father to a private meeting, explained the situation. "The senior samurai want your device banned. They believe it threatens warrior culture. I can overrule them, but doing so would create lasting resentment, would divide my command. I am offering you a choice. You can fight this prohibition, Insist on your device's value. Force me to choose between innovation and unity. Or you can accept the ban, destroy the prototype, agree not to build more, preserve harmony within the clan. What do you choose? Daichi felt the trap. If he fought, he forced his lord into political crisis. If he accepted, he validated the conservative position. Let fear win over evidence, his father spoke first. My lord, we will accept the ban. We value clan unity over our invention. Daichi will destroy the prototype, will not build more, but we ask one thing. Allow Daichi to keep the design documents, the calculations, the knowledge. Do not require that we destroy understanding. Only the physical device, knowledge, can be stored without threatening anyone. And if circumstances change, if the device is ever needed, the knowledge will still exist. Lord Tanaka agreed. Destroy the device, keep the documents, tell no one about them. If questioned, say the design was destroyed with the prototype. I will issue the prohibition officially. Declare that torsion casters are banned from Tanaka clan use. This matter is closed. Daichi destroyed his prototype publicly, disassembled the torsion springs, broke the frame, made it clear that he was complying with the ban, but privately, he could not let it go, could not accept that a working solution to a real problem was being discarded because it threatened status. He kept the design documents as his father negotiated, but he did more. He kept the torsion springs, the critical components that took months to develop, hid them in the workshop storage, and over the next 3 years, in secret, in spare time, he continued developing the design, made it lighter, more reliable, easier to manufacture. He built a second prototype, then a third, tested them in the forest at night where no one would see, refined the mechanism, proved to himself that the device could be even better than the banned prototype. He never told anyone, not his father, not friends. The torsion caster project became his secret obsession, his rebellion against the prohibition, his bet that someday circumstances would prove the ban was wrong, and he would be ready to prove it. 3 years passed. The torsion caster remained banned, forgotten by most of the clan, remembered by senior samurai as an example of inappropriate innovation. Daichi continued his secret development, built 4 working devices, stored them in hidden locations around the castle, in supply rooms rarely accessed, in wall cavities he created during repairs. He practiced with them at night, maintained them, made sure they would function if ever needed. The obsession was dangerous if discovered. He could be expelled from the clan, punished for defying the ban. But he could not stop, could not accept that survival tools should be banned because they challenged tradition. And in winter of 1576, his obsession was validated when Lord Iwata, ruler of the neighboring domain, decided to invade Mikawa. The invasion had been brewing for years. Territorial disputes, succession conflicts, the usual feudal politics of the Sengoku period. Lord Iwata assembled an army of 800 samurai, a force large enough to overwhelm Mikawa's defenses if used correctly. The attack came suddenly, coordinated. Iwata's forces moved quickly, captured 2 outlying villages before Mikawa's forces could respond, pushed toward the central fortress. Lord Tanaka called his garrison to the castle, 150 samurai, plus 50 Ashigaru foot soldiers, plus civilian refugees from the captured villages. Total population inside the fortress was approximately 400 people, and outside, 800 enemy soldiers preparing siege. The math was brutal. They were outnumbered. Could not sally out to fight directly. Could only defend and hope that allies would send reinforcements, but reinforcements would take 3 to 4 days to arrive, maybe longer. The fortress had to hold for at least 3 days, possibly a week, against an enemy with overwhelming numbers and professional siege equipment. The siege began on the 2nd day of the 12th month. Lord Iwata's forces surrounded the castle, began construction of siege towers, battering rams, mantlets to protect soldiers during approach. They worked efficiently, methodically. They had done this before, knew how to reduce fortifications. Within 1 day, they had 2 siege towers assembled, 1 battering ram ready, and firing positions established for their archers. The siege towers were the primary threat. Each one was 3 stories tall, could hold 30 soldiers, could approach the walls and discharge troops directly onto the ramparts. Once soldiers were on the walls, the fortress would fall quickly. Hand-to-hand fighting in confined spaces, where numbers mattered more than position. Daichi watched the siege towers being assembled, watched from the east wall where he was assigned to defensive duties. He calculated distances, 400 feet from tower construction site to wall, beyond arrow range. The enemy was working safely, building the weapons that would defeat the castle, and no one could stop them. Arrows fell short. Defenders could only watch. That evening, Lord Tanaka held a council of war. Commanders reported on defensive preparations, on supplies, on morale. The assessment was grim. The siege towers will be ready tomorrow. They will approach from two sides simultaneously. We cannot defend both positions with adequate force. When they reach the walls, we will be overwhelmed within an hour. We have no counter to siege towers, no way to destroy them before they deploy. Mitsuhide, the master of arms who had led the prohibition 3 years earlier, admitted the problem. If we had weapons with longer range, we could shoot the workers building the towers, could delay or stop construction. But our archers cannot reach 400 feet. We can only wait for towers to come closer, and by then it will be too late. Daichi, standing at the back of the room as a junior engineer, spoke quietly. My lord, we do have a weapon with that range. It was banned 3 years ago, but it still exists. I kept one. I have been maintaining it. It can reach 400 feet, can shoot accurately, can kill the workers building the towers, can buy us time. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at him. Mitsuhide's face went dark. You kept the torsion caster, you defied the ban, you hid a prohibited weapon for 3 years? This is insubordination. This is betrayal of clan decision. Daichi did not back down. I kept it because I believed the ban was wrong. I believed the device would be needed eventually. I was right. We need it now. We can debate the disobedience after we survive. Right now, we have a tool that can save this castle. The question is whether we use it or let tradition kill us. Lord Tanaka raised his hand, silencing Mitsuhide before he could respond. Daichi, you defied my order, kept a banned weapon. I should punish you, but you are also offering a solution we desperately need. I am authorizing you to use the torsion caster. Deploy it. Show us what it can do. If it fails, we have lost nothing. If it works, we revisit the ban. You have until tomorrow morning. Do what you can. Daichi bowed, left the council chamber, went to his hidden cache, retrieved one of his 4 torsion casters, the best one, the one he had refined through 3 years of secret development, carried it to the east wall tower, the position with the clearest view of the siege tower construction site, set it up on the rampart, loaded a bolt, aimed carefully at a worker 420 feet away, a man hammering planks onto the tower frame. Daichi adjusted for wind, for distance, for drop, breathed slowly, released the trigger. The torsion springs unwound with a sharp crack. The bolt flew, crossed 400 feet in less than 2 seconds, hit the worker in the chest, killed him instantly. The man dropped. The hammer fell. Work stopped as other workers stared at their dead companion, trying to understand what happened. There had been no arrow arc, no warning, just sudden death. Daichi reloaded, aimed at another worker, fired, another hit, another death, reloaded, fired again. By the time enemy commanders understood what was happening, 5 workers were dead. The rest were running for cover. Siege tower construction had stopped, and on the castle walls, defenders were watching in stunned silence as a banned weapon proved it had been banned for being too effective, not too weak. Over the next 6 hours, Daichi and his torsion caster completely stopped siege tower construction. Every time workers tried to resume building, he shot them. The range advantage was overwhelming. His bolts reached the construction site easily while enemy arrows fell short of the walls. Lord Iwata's commanders tried various countermeasures. They positioned archers to shoot back, but they could not reach the walls. Their arrows fell harmlessly in the open ground between forces. They tried having workers wear armor, but the torsion caster's bolts punched through standard armor at 400 feet. They tried working at night. Daichi added torches to the construction site by shooting firebolts, lit up the area, kept shooting. By dawn of the second day, siege tower construction had not progressed. 16 enemy workers were dead. The rest refused to work in the open. Lord Iwata was furious. His siege plan depended on towers. Without towers, he had to rely on the battering ram alone. could only attack one gate instead of overwhelming multiple positions simultaneously. The timeline had changed. What should have been a one-day assault was now a multi-day siege, and every day of delay gave Mikawa time for reinforcements to arrive. Lord Iwata tried a new approach. If he could not build siege towers safely, he would rush the existing ram to the gate. Break through before the castle could respond. He ordered 200 soldiers to carry the ram, protected by large shields held overhead, to charge the main gate at dawn. Break it open through speed and mass, the assault began at sunrise. 200 men running across 400 feet of open ground carrying a massive log, moving as fast as possible. Daiichi was waiting. He had moved his torsion caster to a position overlooking the main gate. As the ram carriers entered his range, he started shooting. Not at the soldiers carrying shields. Shields protected them, but at the men carrying the ram itself. The ram was huge, heavy, required all hands on the support poles. Men carrying it could not hold shields. Were exposed. Daiichi's bolts hit them, one by one, as ram carriers fell, dropped the poles. The ram became unbalanced, tilted. Other carriers could not hold the full weight. The ram crashed to the ground 60 feet from the gate. The assault broke apart. Soldiers scattered, ran back to their lines, dragging wounded. The gate held because one man with a banned weapon had made the assault impossible. Lord Tanaka watched from the inner keep, watched Daiichi's torsion caster break the assault, watched defenders rally, watched the impossible defense succeed. He turned to his commanders. The torsion caster is saving us. One device operated by one man is doing what 150 samurai cannot do. Stopping siege equipment, protecting the gate, buying time for reinforcements. I want every senior samurai who voted to ban this weapon to watch what is happening, to understand that their commitment to tradition nearly cost us everything. Mitsuhide, standing nearby, said nothing. His face showed mixture of shame and resentment. The device he had called dishonorable was proving more honorable than tradition, was protecting people while traditional methods failed. It was validation he could not deny, but also could not accept, without admitting he had been wrong. The siege continued for 3 more days. Lord Iwata tried multiple assaults, tried different approaches, tried overwhelming through mass attacks. Every assault was disrupted by Daiichi's torsion caster, bolts flying from the walls at ranges no archer could match, killing key personnel, breaking formations, creating fear. By the 4th day, Lord Iwata's army had lost 43 men to the torsion caster, most killed instantly by bolts they never saw coming. Morale was collapsing. Soldiers were refusing orders to approach the castle, were terrified of the weapon they could not defend against, could not understand. And on the evening of the 4th day, reinforcements arrived. Allied forces from 2 neighboring domains, 600 samurai responding to Lord Tanaka's call for help. Lord Iwata saw the reinforcements, calculated quickly, understood he could no longer win, ordered retreat. His army withdrew. The siege ended. Mikawa Fortress had held, not through traditional defense, not through samurai valor alone, but because one banned weapon had made traditional siege tactics impossible, had extended the castle's reach beyond what honor and training could achieve, had proven that survival required adapting, not preserving. The victory celebration was complicated. Defenders were grateful, alive, successful, but the success was awkward, embarrassing, built on a weapon the clan had banned, built on one man's disobedience, built on admission that senior samurai had been wrong. Lord Tanaka called another council, this time including Daiichi as a full participant, not a junior engineer standing in back. Daiichi's torsion caster saved this castle, saved our lives, saved our domain. I am formally lifting the ban. We will build more torsion casters, will train operators, will integrate this weapon into our defenses. Anyone who objects, speak now. Explain why we should refuse a tool that works. Nobody spoke. Even Mitsuhide remained silent. Could not argue against results. Could not claim honor mattered more than survival when survival had required setting honor aside. Lord Tanaka continued. Daiichi, you disobeyed orders, kept a banned weapon, acted against clan decision. Normally I would punish this. But your disobedience saved us. So instead, I am promoting you. You are now chief engineer. You have authority to develop any defensive innovation you believe has merit. You do not need permission from samurai commanders. You answer directly to me. Build what works. Prove it works, implement it. This clan will adapt or die. I choose adaptation. The lifting of the ban created immediate practical changes. Daichi was authorized to build 20 torsion casters, was given budget, assistance, workshop space. Within 2 months, the Mikawa fortress had torsion casters mounted on every wall section, trained operators, ammunition stockpiles. The defenses had been transformed. What had been a traditional castle with traditional weapons became a hybrid fortress, combining samurai skill with engineering innovation. Range advantage made siege nearly impossible. Any enemy trying to build siege equipment within 500 feet would be shot. Any assault force approaching the walls would face fire they could not return. The castle's defensive capability had multiplied through adoption of one band tool. But the changes went deeper than equipment. The cultural shift was more significant. By authorizing Daichi to develop innovations without samurai approval, Lord Tanaka had created precedent, had admitted that military decisions should be based on effectiveness, not tradition, that craftsmen's opinions mattered as much as warriors' opinions when discussing defensive tools. This was radical change for a samurai clan, threatened the status hierarchy, created resentment among conservative commanders who saw their authority diminished. Mitsuhide retired 6 months after the siege, could not accept the new order, could not serve in a clan that valued devices over skill. Several other senior samurai followed him, left Mikawa, joined clans that maintained traditional values. Lord Tanaka let them go. We do not need commanders who prioritize their status over our survival. Anyone who cannot adapt is welcome to leave. We will replace them with people who understand that warfare evolves and we must evolve with it. The torsion caster's reputation spread beyond Mikawa. Other clans heard about the weapon that had held off a siege. Some requested demonstrations, wanted to see if the device lived up to stories. Daichi conducted demonstrations for visiting delegations, showed how the torsion caster worked, explained the mechanics, offered to share the design. Some clans adopted it enthusiastically, recognized its value, began building their own versions, but others rejected it, used the same arguments Mitsuhide had used, that it was dishonorable, that it undermined warrior skills, that it represented cowardice. The response was divided. Roughly half of clans that saw demonstrations adopted the weapon, half refused. The division created a strategic imbalance. Clans with torsion casters had defensive advantages over clans without them, could hold territories with smaller garrisons, could defend against larger forces. This advantage became obvious within 2 years. By 1578, clans that had adopted torsion casters were successfully defending against invasions that should have overwhelmed them. Clans that had refused were losing territories to enemies who accepted innovation. The correlation was clear. Adaptation meant survival. Tradition without flexibility meant vulnerability. And slowly, reluctantly, more clans began adopting torsion casters, began accepting that their initial rejection had been mistake. The weapon's spread was not uniform, not immediate, but it was steady, inexorable, driven by results. Daichi spent the rest of his career developing defensive innovations. He created improved fortification designs, better gates, more efficient supply systems. Each innovation was tested, proven, implemented. The Mikawa fortress became known as the most advanced defensive position in central Japan, a castle that combined traditional samurai valor with engineering excellence. The combination was powerful, intimidating. Lord Tanaka's domain was never successfully invaded again during his lifetime, partly because his samurai were skilled, partly because his defenses were too sophisticated to breach without catastrophic casualties. Attackers chose easier targets. Mikawa's reputation alone prevented conflicts, and that reputation was built on willingness to defy tradition when tradition failed, on Daichi's disobedience, on one banned tool that proved bans could be wrong. Daichi died in 1602, age 48, of natural causes. He was buried in the castle grounds. His grave marker read, Daichi, Chief Engineer, Defender of Mikawa. Lord Tanaka attended the funeral, spoke about Daichi's contributions. This man saved our castle by refusing to accept that a working solution should be discarded because it threatened comfortable assumptions. His disobedience was more loyal than obedience would have been. He saw what needed to exist and created it despite prohibition. We owe our survival to his stubbornness, to his refusal to let tradition override evidence. The speech was recorded, became part of clan history, used to teach future generations that loyalty means serving the clan's interests, even when that requires defying the clan's orders. That innovation requires courage, not just technical skill. That the person who disobeys might be the person who saves everyone. The torsion caster itself evolved. Later versions incorporated improvements from multiple engineers, became lighter, more reliable, easier to manufacture. By 1620, torsion-style weapons were standard equipment in most Japanese fortresses. The design had become normalized, accepted, no longer controversial, and the controversy itself was forgotten. New generations of samurai grew up with torsion casters as familiar tools, did not remember that they had once been banned, did not know that senior warriors had called them dishonorable, did not understand that their existence represented a victory of pragmatism over tradition. The weapon's history was lost, but its impact remained. Defensive warfare had changed. Siege tactics had evolved to counter long-range weapons. Castles built after 1600 incorporated design elements specifically to accommodate torsion casters. The entire strategic landscape had shifted because one clan had been willing to admit a ban was wrong, and one engineer had been willing to keep working despite prohibition. The lesson spread beyond military applications. The story of Daiichi and the torsion caster became a parable about organizational decision-making, about how groups could be wrong, about how consensus could be dangerous when consensus prioritized comfort over effectiveness. Other clans began creating mechanisms to challenge bad decisions, to allow engineers and specialists to appeal prohibitions, to test banned ideas rather than just enforcing bans. The changes were subtle, slow, but real. By 1630, multiple major clans had formal processes for reviewing old prohibitions, for reconsidering decisions made under different circumstances, for admitting that what made sense in the past might not make sense now. This institutional flexibility, this willingness to adapt, contributed to those clans' survival during the consolidation wars of the early Tokugawa period. Clans that could adapt survived. Clans that could not were absorbed or destroyed. And the ability to adapt started with willingness to question bans, to test forbidden tools, to value effectiveness over tradition when the two conflicted. The castle gates held for 17 hours because Daiichi had disobeyed orders 3 years earlier, had kept working on a banned project, had prepared for the moment when prohibition would be proven wrong. The 17 hours bought time for reinforcements, time that saved 400 lives, time that preserved a domain, time that validated disobedience as sometimes the most loyal act possible. And standing on those gates, watching the siege break, watching the forbidden tool work exactly as he had predicted, Daiichi understood something that changed how he thought about rules, that orders are not sacred, they are provisional. They represent someone's best judgment at a particular time, and when circumstances prove that judgment wrong, loyalty means disobeying the order to serve the interest the order was meant to protect, means building the forbidden tool because the tool works, and working tools save lives. And saving lives matters more than preserving comfortable fictions about honor, skill, and what weapons are appropriate for warriors to use. The gates held, the castle survived, the clan learned, and one banned tool became the weapon that proved bans should always be temporary, always subject to review, always vulnerable to being overturned by evidence, by need, by one stubborn engineer who refused to accept that effective solutions should remain forbidden just because they make traditional solutions look inadequate.